push the red button to the title slide. All right. First and foremost, I just want to say thank you for taking the time to come to this talk, and also to the coordinators of the event. I'm very gracious that they chose selecting me to speak and help provide some more information about this whole Docker movement that seems to be going on. And my name is Les. I've worked for a company named Genuine in South End. Some of you might have heard of it. Mike Miles is pretty popular. He works there. So, been there for 6 years. Been doing Drupal development for 7, 8 years now. Time flies. But yeah, thanks for coming. And by the title slide, this is about Docksal. It's the last local environment you'll ever use, or until the next best thing comes along. But for now, I've been using Docksal for about the last 2 years, and it's completely changed the way that I do development and look at development in general. So let's get right into it. By a quick show of hands, or not, I was curious who runs a local LAMP stack for their development here?
Sometimes.
Sometimes. Cool. Who knows what containers are? Cool. Who's used Docker, heard of Docker? All right. And anybody actually use Docksal or aware of it?
Aware.
Okay. Lando?
Yeah. Aware.
Who works with Drupal? Everybody? So I actually originally created this for Nerd Summit, and I forgot to take that out. Okay. So what should you get out of this? By the end of this talk, you should have a good understanding of why Docksal actually is a great tool, why it's a great idea to go with it, why it can be useful, how it can be useful to you. Not only to your local development, but how it can seamlessly fit into your continuous integration processes as well. You should have an idea of how to approach Docksal, get set up on your system, and more importantly, have a guiding philosophy on how to use it and build up around, build your work and project up around Docksal. So with philosophy comes beliefs, and before when I was originally on a local LAMP stack, and I finally got sick of it. Everybody was on their own LAMP stacks. Everybody was having their own problems. Everybody's a snowflake. Everything's different. You can't depend on anything. And I just said, okay, that's enough of this. What do I want? What do I need? What are my requirements for finding that solution that my team can use and know that our applications are going to run the same without issue. So I asked myself some questions, and I came up with a set of requirements. And the first one was onboarding has to be quick. It has to be less than 30 minutes. And it's sort of an arbitrary number. Most of your applications, I think, that you end up creating are going to take significantly less time to set up. So it is sort of an abstract number. It's like, what is onboarding? It's the process of, in my mind, a developer cloning the project and be working on new features within 30 minutes. It's kind of how I perceive it. The project must define and set up its own environment. So that is to say that the project that you clone, that project itself is completely aware of what it's going to be running in, what it needs to be running in, and it's capable of setting that up where it lives. And a project must know how to run its own high-level operations. So what I mean by that is think about all the processes that go on when you're doing development. You know, you have like Composer now, we have to do Composer install, we have all these front-end build mechanisms that you need to run to get node modules installed, and you have to build your assets, You have to grab databases. You have to do all sorts of things. Anything you can think of. Anything that's required to actually do your work. The framework should be aware of or know how to actually do all that stuff at a high level. And I don't have to want to support it. That is to say, I don't want to come up with my own homebrew system to do any of this. So reach out there and look for something that already exists, and don't just start from scratch. Buy into something that is going to be supported for a long time, because you don't want it to be just thrown out tomorrow and then all of a sudden your applications no longer have support and you have to figure out something else. This is a good rule of thumb in general, I think. I searched and I evaluated and I came out with Docksal. So why did I go with Docksal? Well, it's built around Docker, so it's container-based, so it's always consistent. That is to say that wherever this project is running, everybody's going to be running it through the same environment, same system. It comes with custom command support, and this is critical. This goes back to the whole project must know how to run itself, or set itself up. So with Docksal, you can add custom commands, and in they are bash commands essentially. And it's an automated scripting system. It has support for commonly used services out of the box. So looking at that, that was really cool. They built support in for Varnish, Memcache, Solar. They have documentation on how to integrate things like Redis. At the end of the day, though, it's a Docker application, Docker Compose system. So really, anything that's out on Docker Hub, you can just tie into your application. You just got to figure out how to do it. You get out-of-the-box CLI tools, which is probably one of the biggest draws of Docksal, is that you get everything in one box. And some of those things, jumping the gun a little bit, it seamlessly integrates with CI processes, asterisk. And that is to say that it supports some CI systems, but I can see support increasing beyond that pretty quickly. And it's actively maintained. So the CLI service is your command line interface with Docksal. Out of the box, you get all of these: PHP Composer, Drupal, Terminus, Node, NPM, Yarn, Ruby, Python. Probably more in there that I actually don't even know about. WordPress, WP CLI is in there as well. Think about that. So that was really nice. Everything was just there for me. I don't have to worry about installing anything. It's just available for everybody to use. Getting it set up was as simple as installing VirtualBox. So install VirtualBox, asterisk. With Mojave, it's a little more. If you go visit this link at the bottom, you'll see exactly what the process is for getting that going. You have to install VirtualBox, check a box, and then run this bash script, and then just fire up your VM. And this is using Docker Machine. There's multiple ways you can run Docksal. Actually, you can use Docker for Mac, you can use Docker Machine, or Docker Toolbox, whatever you're more comfortable with using. I will say though, from my experience, Docker Toolbox, Docker Machine seems to be more performant than Docker for Mac. Is my experience so far. I don't know if that's changed since the last time I checked was probably a year ago. Jeff's shaking his head no. I guess I won't go do that experiment after this. That's good to know.
It's better.
It's sad. It's better.
Yeah, it's not great.
Oh, so sad. And beyond that, all you need to do to get started with Docksal is this with your project. You put that directory in there. You say you issue a command, and an environment spins up namespace to your directory that this lives in, and you have immediately a CLI service, a database, and a web server. Excuse me. Docksal. That's all you need. We're already into the demos. This is so quick.
Wow.
Yeah, this is mostly just demos and me just hanging out in the command line. All right, so demo number 1, we have a raw environment, just add .docksal. So, is that readable? Cool.
Front row. So it's fine for me.
Do that there. All right, so let's see. Make dir my app. Go in there, you just add. That's it. And fin is the command line interface to Docksal. So for those of you who went to the Lando talk earlier, this is built on Docker Compose, so this is going to look very similar to when your environment's getting spin up, since they rely on the same underlying tech. It'll create your DB, your CLI, and your web service, namespace to my app, and it'll create a network for you, and it provides a URL for you to visit. If I go to myapp.docksal, I get forbidden. Don't worry, that's part of the demo. And that's because Docksal makes a lot of assumptions. The whole thing with Docksal is like 0 configuration to start with. So you just add that directory, and that's technically all you need to run your project. It's as simple as having a database, a single database with those CLI tools. It assumes things like where the doc root lives. So it's not web; it actually lives in doc root. I think it's controversial for some reason. Some people think the directory the app should live in web versus doc root. I don't know. So we added doc root. Create index.php in there. And there you go. So you have a fully operating web environment with just .docksal. Takes care of so much for you. So it makes a lot of assumptions, and it's conventional over configuration. And you just sort of buy into it, which is something I was very interested in. I've really bought into the whole convention over configuration thing over the years, and it just saves me a lot of time and effort, I feel. So I don't have to go and figure out how to do things. And that leaves me that frees me up to just build my application the way I want to build my application. I don't have to worry about anything else. All right, back into it. Now let's go into custom commands now. So Docksal does support adding custom commands. You run those commands through fin, and they're placed in .docksal/commands. And commands are just bash scripts that are run on the host ultimately. Fin feeds some variables into that script that are available for you to use, such as the project root, where you live, what the name of your virtual host is, a number of other variables. So arguments. So it does end up passing in the arguments. The arguments are available as you normally would.
Because it's bash.
Right. So it's all.
Carry on.
It's just bash. So, very common thing you'll see with Docksal applications out there is they've standardized on this method, this command name, for setting up the application, setting up the project. So you clone the project and you run fin init. Now, init's not actually built into the Docksal. It doesn't actually know about it. It's just a custom command that everybody's adopted. Now, I'm not actually going to write it. I'm going to show you one that already exists. So this is what that init script might look like. Out of curiosity, how many people are comfortable with bash scripting? I can copy paste from the web. That's where I'm at. But there's lots of examples of init scripts available on Docksal's GitHub, on their documentation, and there's tons of inspiration to draw from. The thin script itself is written in bash, and that is also a great place to look at for thoughts around, like, I need to do this certain thing in my fin command. I'm not sure how to do it. I find myself going to the fin script itself to see reference. Just a point of advice. So this is going to set up my application in its entirety. A lot of the stuff is copy-paste from the standard Drupal init command that you can get from the example Drupal project provided on Docksal's GitHub. But this really boils down to the point where I'm setting up my application, which is in here. So I have this function. All of this is pretty much just copy-pasted throughout all of our projects at Genuine. Then the init project function itself is where you would set up your application. So this is what I do. It can be far simpler than this. It can just be like you're creating an index file on yourself. You're copying a local settings file and you're saying Drupal install. Like if you were executing commands sequentially on your command line. Just copy paste them, drop them in. You see finexec here. That's how you execute commands within the CLI environment, the CLI service in Docksal. So I'm saying finexec, run composer install, finexec composer run script, BLT alias. I use BLT a lot. I highly recommend checking it out if you've been curious about it. I can't speak highly enough about it. And then I set up my site, and BLT takes care of a lot of those things for you. So, here we go. So this is the application directory that's living in, and I'm going to say fininit, and cross my fingers. Hashtag live demo. Last time I checked, this takes about a minute. So this is what your people new to the project are going to do the first thing they clone this project. They're going to clone the project, and they just run init, and they have everything they already need. The init script will go out and do everything it needs, whether it needs to download databases or what have you. This doesn't. Build all of that setup logic into the init script in a way that, and test it. And that's it. And there it is. Okay, so. There you go, it set up a site for me. So new developer clones the site, clones the application, they run fininit, and they have that immediately that they can work with. That's it. That took a minute. Now in presentation world, that's a long time to wait. But for a developer that has no clue about how, in a lot of cases, how to set up an application the first time around, having something like an init script is indispensable in terms of efficiency gains. It's completely changed. I wish we had metrics. I wish we tracked the metrics in terms of the productivity gains of Genuine before and after we started using this. And it's just a serious quality of life improvement. And Docksal's configuration boils down to several files. You do most of your alterations in there. You have docksal.env, docksal.yaml. Docksal.yaml is essentially a subset of a Docker Compose file that you're editing directly. So Docksal has abstracted most of what the Docker Compose file looks like and taken out all of the stuff that's going to be constantly repeated and just provided you a mechanism for just specifying what is truly unique to your project. And you have docksal.env where you can define project level variables that get shipped around and that are requirements like API keys, things of that nature, and you can override certain settings that Docksal would ordinarily automatically select for your project, like the virtual host, where the Docker is. That's how you would, that's the mechanism for customization. Then you have Docksal local. Docksal local, that is something you would keep out of version control, and Docksal local is the last step in the stitching process. So project level looks at docksal.env, docksal.yaml, uses that, and then whatever is present, Docksal local, docksal env, docksal local YAML will override that. Then you have derived images. And derived images are basically, it's your own Docker file. Who's used Docker files before? Who's actually built a Docker file? Cool.
Successfully, or?
Attempted. Knows what Docker file. So this is how you do that. Or you would just find a different image and use that and specify a different image as you would in a Docker Compose file. Demo number 3, overriding project images and extending images. So exit over here. So in Docksal, if you want to specify, well, first and foremost, this is what that docksal.yaml file looks like. This is a customized version of that. Ooh, that's really small. Oh God. Hashtag lab demo. You have your, let me find a simpler one. Actually, there's no simpler one because all of my projects are using Dockerfile now. Right, so say you have a need for using Google Chrome to run your behat tests. We had to do that because BLT requires Google Chrome be present in the environment that it's executing in for running behat tests. Just to give you some context. So this just says, I want to call my image this. So Docksal will look at that Docker file, it'll build it, it'll create an image out of it, and it will select that image to create the CLI service. And you place that Docker file here. So this is just like copy-paste that found on web for installing Google Chrome. So can everybody read that?
Yeah, it's not given.
Okay. So the key here is you want to extend what Docsal's already given you. So you do, at the Docker level, you're saying from that service, that image that Docsal's already provided us, I want to add this stuff. So I want to add Google Chrome, I do that. Copy paste stuff from Stack Overflow. And it goes on. When you compile your project after that, the way you would just say fin up or fin reset. And it's going to do that. It's going to build that Docker file for you. It's going to show it right there. You'll see what it's doing. You say, okay, you're creating. Here's all the dependent services as well. Web and Varnish are dependent on what's in CLI for usage. And that's it. So you do it once, you put it there, you commit it. Then when everybody, part of your process at this point is when you're doing your feature development, when you're working with the project, you should be running FinUp or FinReset fairly frequently just to make sure that any changes that were made to the configuration are being applied. Because at that point, if you're not doing that, then you are operating out of line with what everybody else is doing. Bad idea. Conformity. And then stacks. Stacks and Docker Compose are really just a set of predefined services that you can specify that you want to use, and they're named. Docksal, the last I checked, shipped with 2 stacks. The default stack, which gives you your web, CLI, and DB services, but they provide an Acquia stack as well. And the Acquia stack comes with those 3, with the Solar, Varnish, and Memcache in addition. So going back to my app, that's accomplished by going into docksal.env, and you're setting your Docksal stack to the name of that stack that you want to use. You say fin reset, and reset will wipe away your containers. You'll lose whatever information is in there. You'll recreate them in the image of the latest configuration of the project. But you see now it added Memcache, Web, and Varnish. With just changing a single value, I'm now using 3 completely separate services. And if you have like an in-house brew that you set up, or an in-house setup, you can just create your own stack, and you can put that in. You can distribute that amongst your developers. And this is all. And their documentation is excellent, so I'm just sort of like wisping over all of these features, trying to show some cool stuff. Showed that. It's a quick demo. And then integrating with CI. So this is like my latest and greatest love of Docksal and what they're doing. It's like this sort of this product offering feels like. It's platform as a service, I think is what I heard somebody refer to like Lando earlier. It is. They have a Sandbox Server system and a CI agent. And what the Sandbox Server is it will. This is a mechanism that they put together that you can use with AWS. It's an AWS template of some kind. Just a high-level overview of what it is, and it will spin up Docksal sandboxes wherever you want. And then the CI agent is ready to use those. And what do these do? It's essentially, I've been describing it as a multi-dev environment similar to what Pantheon does, I want to say. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but it hooks seamlessly into your coding process. You push commits up, and it'll spin up an environment automatically for you based on your branch name and perform operations on it. And it'll run those fin commands that you have, and we'll look at an example of that right now. And really quick, it currently only supports Bitbucket, Pipeline, Circle CI, and GitLab, but there's plenty of room to expanding on those. So really quick, what does that look like? And I realize I have to connect to a VPN. Oh boy. Oh boy. Oh boy. If anybody wants to get in contact, that's my email. And bonus round, I get to put a 2-factor auth token in. I think this expires or something because I was connected earlier. There's no problem. Okay. So the idea is you provide information about the Sandbox environment in your CI, in your repository service or your CI service. And we happen to use Bitbucket, and so you expect the CI agent would expect these variables to be there, and then it knows how to consume and use those variables. So in my case, we didn't use the AWS script. We just fired up a standard Ubuntu box that was accessible, and all we did was install Docksal in it, and that was it. We ran that script to install Docksal, and that was it. I specified where the build should go, and if we head on over to the project, photo op, you go to pipelines, I can see all my pipelines that have been run. And this is what, it's so small. And this is maybe what your, in this case, Bitbucket pipelines file would look like if you were using the CI agent. Using the CI agent, it comes with a series of commands. Things you'll have to do, you'll have to say source build environment to take those variables that you've defined and absorb them into the CI agent and actually create a common set of variables that it knows how to use. It normalizes it normalizes the environment variables that it's using, so it can actually interact with all those different CI services, Bitbucket, GitLab, etc. And then it's going to execute commands directly on the sandbox. So this is going to create your variables. It's going to check out your code in the sandbox directly, set it to what it should be based off of this commit that this is running against, and it's going to execute these operations. So in this case, I have an artifact build saying, build my artifact, send it off somewhere. I have an init one that just sets up the environment, so you can see exactly what your application would look like if somebody was to check it out right now on that commit. So we're going to go ahead and in pipelines, you can look at your branches. I could say, I want to run a pipeline for a branch. And I can choose what pipeline I want to run. And you know what? I'm just going to init this. And off it goes. This is where we play Final Jeopardy music. Nice. And someone would. So it created it normalized environment variables. It initialized the code checkout on the Sandbox server itself. It's running fininit now, so it's setting up the project directly on that server. This did not exist there before. I made sure of it. So it's doing it for the first time. This is running directly on Linux too, which is nice because your build Docker is much faster on Linux than it is on Mac or Windows. And that's another thing. Docksal will run on all platforms. It runs on Linux, obviously. It runs on Windows, and it runs on Mac.
Is that why you are using VirtualBox for the Docksal, for the machine?
Yeah.
So running it under Linux and under VirtualBox to get it to run faster on a Mac?
Right. So containers have to run on the Linux system. And on both Mac and Windows, you have to virtualize Linux in order to run containers. Okay, cool. So this ran all the way through, was successful, did stuff, did import some configuration, saw the site, import some configuration, and now I have a new URL that I can visit to see what that looks like. Copy paste. There you go. So now you have this system that you can customize however you need to fire up whatever environments you need for whatever purposes, QA, showing the client, what have you. Really cool stuff. Big productivity gains there. I just started, we really got this implemented, I want to say a month ago, and we're sort of piloting it with QA right now. It's going pretty well. So that's great. That's a powerful offering. Other notables, finshare. So you can run this command, finshare, and this will automatically use ngrok to map your local environment to a URL that's internet accessible. You can send this to whoever you want, and they can just seamlessly look right into your local in its current state. So if you just want to like, I just tried this new prototype, this new feature, I want to get some rapid feedback on it. You don't want to bother deploying it anywhere. You just want to get the client's take on, what do you think about this? Just send it right over. Sign up, quick sign off, great. Like, it's nice. Nice. Another one, Fin runs CLI. Fin run CLI lets you execute the commands available within the CLI service without having to create a Docksal environment. So it'll just pick a CLI image to use. You can override what image you want, whether you want to use version 2.2 of the image. Docksal has a certain naming or tagging convention for all of its images, so you know what you're getting. You can override that. You will use the system default at that point if you don't specify. So I can say binrc terminus. I've never run this before. I have no idea what's going to happen. I get all those. binrc drush. So they're all available. This is particularly helpful with Composer, though, where I found that you want to do a Composer create project, but you need Composer first. You have to create the .docksal directory. Your .docksal directory lives in your Composer project, but you can't create a Composer project in there because there's already a directory there. That's where you want it to live. So you just say finrc Composer create project that creates your Composer project. After that, you create the .docksal folder in there and proceed. Boilerplate projects. These are all available out of the box. So Drupal 8, Drupal 7, Laravel, Symfony, Hugo, Gatsby. Bunch of ready-to-go applications ready for demoing and sampling and digging into. And add-ons. So add-ons are cool. All the add-ons available live in their GitHub right now. There's open issues for allowing you to specify your own add-ons repository. So if you have a customized set of add-ons that you want to use at your company, at your shop, you can do that and bring them down. But for now, it's locked into what's here. The biggest ones that I use are BLT and ULI. ULI is nice because it lets you just fin ULI. You'll just pass in your Drush alias and it'll bring that up for you automatically. It'll open a browser for you automatically. So to recap, so you saw how quick onboard times are with using something like this. You saw that, saw what you get out of the box, excuse me. On my speaker notes, I practiced with speaker notes before in any case, you saw how Docksal can actually set everything up for you. You saw that you can create these custom commands to implement those high-level operations, simplify things. You don't have to know all these npm commands. You don't have to run all these individual binary commands to do stuff. You just run these high-level project commands that do the same thing every time in the same order. So it goes. Some of you went to the talk earlier on what do you do first? Do you run config import first? Do you update your database first? Well, you decide that collectively what works best for you, and you define that in an update script, fin update, or fin app update or something, and you have that order in there. It's constant. So, yeah. So, it simplifies things. How to set your project, have your project know how to set itself up, and init, how to get started integrating with CI services. That was Sandbox. And here's some references. Docksal.io. Docs at Docksal.io, their documentation was just recently revamped. It looks really great now. Very consumable. Their GitHub, they have YouTube videos, and they're on Gitter as well. You get good support from there. Thanks, guys. Finishing right at 5 o'clock. I have until 5:15 or 4:15. 5:15. Oh, no kidding. 15 minutes early. I thought it was at 5 o'clock and I started rushing. My bad. Are there any questions? Jeff.
So, has there been any difficulty with BLT inside of Docksal? Because I know that's something that a lot of people, I work at Acquia, full disclosure, and we maintain BLT, and a lot of people who don't want the heavyweight kind of setup that Drupal VM gives, they want to use something more Docker-based and easier to get running. And so I know that there's been some effort with Lando and some other things, but I haven't seen much with Docksal.
So I want to say that no, there's not been really any difficulty at all. Initially, Bolt or BLT, I think it's just BLT, it's not Bolt, right?
It used to be Bolt a long time ago.
It's stuck in my head now. BLT had some binary requirements, LSOF, and I believe it depended on Selenium as well being present on the physical system that it was running on. I had to create my own Docker image that extended Docksal's CLI service and use that with those binaries included. And other than that, there was no problem. You just need to make sure that when you're executing BLT commands, you're saying fit exec BLT. And that's the biggest issue that I find that people have with, well, at least within the department that I've experienced. There's not been an issue.
It'd be neat if we, I know that one long-term goal is to make it so that BLT can like integrate with other tools out of the box. Because right now it just integrates with Drupal VM.
So it's an interesting problem with BLT and marrying these Docker environments together. So it's like a chicken and egg problem almost, right? It's like you need the Docker environments to run BLT, but you want BLT to be able to set up these environments for you.
Yeah.
I think both things should be supported. And I think if anything should be supported, probably it makes more sense to have BLT be able to create these project structures for you. So you want to get started with Docksal or Orlando, have BLT be able to create both of them, because ultimately the dependencies to run those things, you just need PHP to run BLT, right?
Yep.
And PHP is probably going to be actually present on most of these systems, but you also don't want to really depend on that. It's like, I feel...
Yeah, it's always
support both ways and see which ones use more, and then support one more than the other, I guess.
Yeah, at this point, it might just be best to have recipes or something. I know a few people have done blog posts,
yeah,
but that's not as helpful because it doesn't get updated, you know, a year
it needs to be
later
included with the documentation.
So, yeah.
No, but I mean, like, if you want to use VirtualBox, you're going to, like, have different VM images that you can just use with it. So, like, if you're going to use Docksal, you should just have a recipe to build BLT within that rather than have it ship as BLT with the code for doing it with Lando or Docksal or other ways all in the same repo. It seems like you should have a recipe to build it in that and a recipe to build it the other way or whatever.
Yeah.
Make it available, like, so that it ships to those environments.
That's a nice thing. You have, like, so I know Jay Hedstrom. I don't actually know his real name. I know his username, Jay Hedstrom. He's working on a cool little side project that I was looking at where he wants basically to have Drupal core ready to go out of the box. You clone that project, and it's a Docksal project. It's a thin it. You have the full core available for you, full Drupal, regular Drupal site, just core. And you can immediately just run tests. The initiative is to have something that's more approachable for testing, because out of the box, I don't know really how to set up tests for Drupal and run them locally. So this is going to help with that. So if you have Docksal installed and you have this Drupal testing project, then you just clone that project, run init, say run tests, then run tests, and off it goes. Like, it's automatically doing it for you. It's already figured out how to connect everything together, run its own high-level operations. So it's really cool seeing what's happening right now, and I just feel like in like 5 years, when Docker has been more adopted, like you can have like so many productivity gains. It's so fast to spin up these things. It's so consistent every time. Just makes a developer happy.
Yeah, and their computers are just going to have more and more RAM, or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to be, yeah.
More memory to use.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Just on the running tests locally, the topic here before was on DevShop. He forked the Drupal 8 Composer and has some built-in tests in there. So that's something to look at for local tests, just out of the box.
You forked Drupal 8 Composer? Wait,
yeah.
what?
Yeah, so the Scaffold or whatever
Oh, okay.
that everyone uses, it's just a slightly modified version of that, with built-in tests and everything.
Tests.
Everything that's needed for that, because he said you have to do weird stuff with having a separate composer file in your behat folder, running composer installed separately, and copying over config files.
Manual tasks that you kind of have to run?
Not in the typically, but the way that he set it up for DevShop anyways was all automated.
By the composer, composer. So.
Oh, it did. Okay.
Yeah. It's cool because test-driven development is great, but the barrier to entry is you have to write tests. So at least if you have
some basic tests ready to go.
Then you can.
We all I learned by pretty much reverse engineering or Googling things, but I learned best when there's already examples with the working project that I can just dig into.
Absolutely.
And it's self-documenting. Definitely.
Maybe at the after thing will help me find the guy who was just doing the last thing, because he definitely could explain it better than we can.
Yeah, no, at the after party, definitely, for sure. Let's do that. Let's have a talk.
You can use in your program.
So if you're comfortable with Bash scripting, those scripts looked complicated. They're mostly copy-paste from the existing Docksal documentation. It's literally automated commands on your terminal that you would just.
Bash is a mess. It's an ugly old
I'm trying to not say that.
Forever. It is. It's but at the same time.
But it's also available everywhere.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, it's ubiquitous.
Right. It's
Yes.
ubiquitous. So having that knowledge that it's ubiquitous, I know Docksal will run it almost everywhere without any other prerequisites.
That's great.
Any other cues?
So we're a Mac shop. I don't know if genuinely more or less a Mac shop.
Yeah.
The biggest thing that's been bothering me about all this stuff is the performance. Is it usable? I mean,
Oh yeah.
what kind of complaints do you get? And you said Docker Toolbox is got an edge over Docker for Mac.
Yeah, I don't know how Docker for Mac is actually implemented, but I just know the reports, my own experiences. I know that when I was using Docker for Mac, I was switching over to it, and I just wanted to hang myself compared to what I was using before, because I'd come from using Docker Toolbox, Docker Machine. Yeah, I can't explain it, but Docker Machine has clear performance improvements over Docker for Mac.
It's that much faster running on Linux that you can run it in a VM on a Mac and it's still faster.
The big reason for that is the way that the file system is handled. And this actually can be a problem, like if you're using Windows, or if you're using a share that's configured a little incorrectly. Docker for Mac uses a virtual file system that's actually slow, but it caches the reads. So after you load a page once, it'll be a little faster, but that first page load, so if you're doing development and changing PHP code, you have to reload the files and it's very slow. Also, if you're doing composer stuff, that's really slow. Drupal install, that can be really slow if you're using like a shared folder, which most of our projects do. But Docker Machine avoids that problem by using NFS to share the folder into the virtual machine, and then Linux has its own file system set up with Docker that's way faster. I think AUFS by default or something like that. The point is that the file system access is way slower, and Docker still hasn't figured out how to fix that on a Mac, Docker for Mac version.
I guess where
Depending
I'm
on your
coming
project, it
from,
can be really good, but and on Windows, it's in a similar situation.
where I'm coming from is I'm using a virtual machine with Vagrant right now, and essentially all the tooling's inside the virtual machine. We're sharing all the code in with NFS in a virtual machine, and like running git status takes forever. Like first page load takes forever. And I'm wondering if the problems that like with sharing NFS into a virtual machine versus Docker, which and all these tools which are essentially sharing NFS into a virtual machine, am I going to really see? Is there going to be an improvement or not? I don't know.
Possibly not.
Yeah,
You
that's
really
what I'm
have to
afraid
test,
of.
You have to test your site too, because different sites are different. Like some sites have a lot more files.
And we're a shop and we have like 40 sites between Drupal 7 and like Drupal 8.5 sites.
In my experience, we were using Vagrant and switched to Lando Docker, and there was definitely marked improvement.
Huh, okay.
And we're doing Docker for Mac, but it has
Yeah.
gotten slower with the upgrades. And in fact, I have not upgraded to Mojave yet for that reason. I have heard anecdotally from other developers that like they saw it get slower. So I
Yeah,
don't
just
know.
in like the 4 months or so that we've been using it, it's gotten slower.
Yeah.
But it's still faster than we were with Vagrant.
Yeah.
That's enough to help me sink the time.
I would definitely try it.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't. It's especially since even if it's not faster today, I guarantee that within 5 years it's going to be. And even if it's a little slower, like for me, sometimes these projects are slower. I maintain Drupal VM, but I don't use it for a lot of projects. I only use it for a few things because it's slower to get it running, and it's slower to just quickly do something. Even if it takes 5 seconds to load a page instead of 3, it's still faster for me to jump into a new project, do something, change it, and go back.
It's worth it anyway because it's super quick to spin something up in this Docker
Yeah.
container and just test it out. Like you won't waste any of your day doing that.
I think what happened with us, so our Vagrant machine that we use is one to rule them all. It's not per project. So the advantage that I'll be getting also is the per project config, because
Yeah.
it used to not matter because we all hosted on on the same production environment. But now we've grown some more Pantheon sites, more Aqua sites. Some of them we've upgraded to PHP 7, some we haven't. So now we're starting to get out of sync with that
Yeah.
one VM rule them all problem. So it's time probably.
Yeah. And that's the thing I like going again with Docksal. It's you start off with that 0 configuration. You find one thing that works for most of your projects, but if you need to shift like just a couple of things, it's relatively easy to change that init script and just tweak a couple of things. Or if you need to include a couple of different binaries in that project for whatever reason, you add that Docker file into your .docksal folder where it needs to go. That apt-get install this binary in there, and you update and follow the documentation that you need to do to apply that Docker file and update your project, and it has it. It's I don't know really how to explain the emotion of joy But it's that's what I feel like. It is one of those things you start using Drush, it just changes the way you work entirely.
Yeah.
Or Git. It's like that. So, any other questions? Well, thank you for your...
So you, sorry.
No,
You
go.
must have a lot of different sites, 'cause you're a shop too, so is there, I don't know quite how it works in terms of disk space, but are you largely able to reuse images and stuff?
Oh, yeah.
Like, what's the economy of scale for,
Well,
if you had 30 sites, it's not 30 times
so
disk space.
images can be large. I'm not sure how that maps to when you spin up a container. I don't know how large that container is, or
I guess that's what I mean.
because the container is maintained. They use I think something called supervisor to make sure the containers stay alive or something like that. I don't know. I'm actually not very good at Docker. That's why I like Docksal or things like Lambda. I don't think there's a huge impact on size. The images themselves are probably the biggest part. The images can be several hundred megabytes. But you just use that image once and all the containers are derived from that same image. And I think Docker does some kind of interesting caching mechanism where it figures out, it does some kind of compression thing. I don't think size is an issue. I've never run into an issue with it.
If you are using Docker for Mac, make sure that you keep an eye on that QCOW file. And fix that. Because I'm using the Docker VM on this, but the QCOW file will keep growing and growing unless you're using Edge on Docker for Mac. So if you find yourself running out of storage, check that file. But I think the Edge version uses a raw file instead that has a size limit that you can set, which won't necessarily use that much space, but it can go up to that.
It's like a hard limit.
Yeah.
I think a raw file is going to be more performant too in terms of I/O than QCOW2, because when it has to resize itself, I think
Yeah.
QCOW2 is
But
going
it's
to slow.
limited to the SSD because it doesn't work very well on the camera.
Yeah, so anyway, Rob is the one who said this, and he's not here today because he's sick, but he said that he was finding some slowness with the QCOW2, and he just wiped it out and reformatted his virtual disk image as a raw file and had a performance increase with that.
I forget when we timed it because I was using Docker for Mac when I first started it.
Oh, yeah.
And we did a timing, of once with Docker for Mac and once with Docker VM, and it was 40 to 60% increase in speed and performance using Docker VM.
Yeah. The issue comes when you're dealing with a lot of small files. So things like installing Composer and installing node modules. Node modules is probably the biggest offender. That's when it really slows down. Because I look at so generating a build artifact, we copy, we copy files, we reinstall, we rerun the dependency installers, and commit that, push it up, and locally that takes me about 7 minutes to run. On the build environment, using the CI agent, Sandbox environment, it is complete in less than a minute. It's ridiculous. It makes me want to develop on Linux. It makes me want to get rid of my Mac and get a Linux machine. Because I think about it, and I used to use Homebrew all the time. I haven't used Homebrew in a year. I've just been using what's in Docksal and what comes with Docksal in the CI service. Or I update, if I need a binary, I put it in a Docker file, or I'll make a new image, push that image up to GitHub, and tell docksal.yaml to use that image instead of a custom Docker file. It's great. You get the full power of Docker Hub available at your fingertips. So I think once people get more comfortable with Docker, they'll just be more comfortable with these tools in general. For sure. I want to learn more about Docker. It's my next thing I want to say.
I think it's a testament to the product that you're I don't know anything about Docker, but I use it extensively.
It simplifies things. Docksal simplifies things enough for you just barely to get you dip your toes into Docker, and then it's that first step that you need to really getting into the full thing. Because you can, hold ultimately what it does, it compiles that Docker Compose file. Now, I see that and I just like, I want to run away now. But I don't have to deal with that.
It's way
You
more
could if you wanted to.
Yeah,
You can make them simple.
it's not that long.
So it's 5:17, but we're the last talk, so we get to abuse time.
But you are keeping us from here.
That's a good point.
So,
Any other questions?
I just have a recommendation. You said you're thinking of developing on Linux. Have you looked at System 76?
Oh no, I haven't like looked seriously at Linux.
No,
for a long
but
time.
these people are trying to make Linux great again. They have really good hardware.
Okay.
Laptops and
I've got Galaga from a couple years ago, and just one small update or one to just
broken.
crap everything.
Oh, that's too bad.
I
Well,
so
I haven't
right now
tried
it's
it out
functioning
yet.
as a media server, a very, very expensive media
Oh,
server.
that's too bad. Well, forget my advice.
I was thinking I might still check them out though.
I forget who, I don't know who, but I did see one downstairs, or whoever it was that owns that one might have